Hi everyone, it's Chris and welcome back to another video. Thank you very much for joining me. Now recently I shared some albums that I haven't played for a very long time, and one of them was this, Spirit of 76 by Spirit, or really predominantly Ed Cassidy and Randy California. It's a double album, quite a sprawling kind of album, kind of different sounds, quite psychedelic in places, some really good covers. In fact, I think the best songs on here are the cover versions. So Walking the Dog, Like a Rolling Stone, great version of Hey Joe. And that got me thinking about double albums. Now the other day I shared one of my favourite live songs is the live version of Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd on the album Pulse. And obviously the original was on this album, The Wall. Now I haven't played this album for years, so I decided to play it. And it's a bit like watching a film. You've got to kind of watch it in its entirety to really kind of get the benefit of it possibly. But I felt it went on a bit, if I'm really honest. Is it my favourite Pink Floyd album? Nowhere near. Much prefer Dark Side of the Moon, much prefer Wish You Were Here, much prefer Animals, much prefer Medal. It was okay. And beyond a certain number of songs, I got a little bit bored, if I'm honest. And then I played this album. Now, I haven't played this for about 30 years, and there's probably a reason for that. I didn't like this very much either. Beyond the kind of main songs, so I'm Free, Pinball Wizard, Go to the Mirror, and We're Not Going to Take It with that See Me, Feel Me kind of motif refrain in it. It's a sort of album that it's a bit, again, like watching a film. You've got to watch the whole thing to kind of listen to the whole thing to get the benefit of it. But lots of short songs, forever changing. Yeah, there's some brilliant songs on it, without a doubt. But is it overly long? So double albums, are they an artist's creative peak, or are they just a little bit overblown and kind of, and full of filler? So I started to think about, what other doubles have I got? I've got a lot of double live albums, and I've got a lot of albums which are half studio, half live, and some compilations. But the double studio albums, how many have I got? Actually, I've got a lot. So what I've got for you here is a kind of an eclectic mix of the sort of double albums I've got. So we're going to start off with this one, which was one of the worst ones that I listened to, if I'm really honest. This is from '87 on A&M Records. Sting, Nothing Like the Sun. It's all right. It's kind of a little bit jazzy in places, and it's nicely produced, got famous people on it, Knopfler, Clapton, those sorts of people. It's okay. It's only 3 songs on each side, which is probably a pretty good thing. I kept skipping the needle. It's got an awful version of Little Wing on it. This is the album with Englishman in New York, and it's got a few decent songs on it, but, wasn't great. This was a lot better. This is the debut from Chicago Transit Authority, who had to change their name to Chicago, kind of renowned for their schmaltzy ballad stuff in the 70s and 80s, and this is very different. So this is much more jazzy. It's kind of a mixture really of rock and jazz and blues and all sorts of stuff going on here. Some brilliant musicianship on this album, and there's some very interesting songs, and some songs I really enjoyed on here. The star of the show on here undoubtedly is Terry Kath, and there's some tremendous songs on here. So Beginnings, Question 67, 68, Poem 58 is great. Side 3 is absolutely Terry Kath at its peak for me. Freeform guitar, which is kind of like wild. South California Purple is very Hendrixy, and a brilliant version of Spencer Davis's group's I'm a Man, which is just brilliant. Liberation is kind of a guitar kind of workout, which is really good. If you don't mind the kind of horns and guitars together, I think you'd really enjoy that album. I'm sure you're familiar with it. To the 80s now. This is another double that I've had in my collection for a long time, and I really like the 4 singles that came from this. I love Power of Love, I like Relax, I really like Two Tribes, and I like Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. I love them on 12-inch singles, I love the extended versions of them. I played this album, and actually beyond those 4 songs, no, I just thought it was a load of filler. A load of stuff that, it was all right. But again, I skipped a few, thought I had enough of that song, moved it on. If this had been a single album, we probably still would be talking about it. But as a double, I'm not sure. Here's something completely different, 13 years prior, from 1970. This is the 3rd album from Soft Machine. This is kind of a Canterbury album. It's very jazzy, a little bit of a departure from the sound that came before in the first two albums by them. Facelift, there's 4 songs, one on each side of the vinyl. Facelift is quite avant-garde, the others are very jazzy. It's okay, it's not bad to have on in the background, but yeah, it's okay. Next up was this. Now, I bought an album by this fella recently, Isaac Hayes. This is Shaft, obviously. Hot Buttered Soul, and I was really disappointed. I thought it was really lame, in fact, and I should have known better, because I bought Black Moses probably about a year ago, and I sold that on because I thought it was rubbish. This I quite like, actually. I do like this, especially the longer cuts. So No Name Bar, Cafe Reggio, Do Your Thing, especially Do Your Thing, tremendous. They're really good. Double album, yeah, it's almost like a soundtrack to a Starsky and Hutch episode, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Next up is an album that's often seen as one of the greatest doubles of all time. In fact, one of the greatest albums of all time in lots of this, and it's London Calling by The Clash. Now, I love the debut album by The Clash, and to be honest, my interest in The Clash went pretty much after that. The first album is very punky. This isn't punky at all. So it starts off brilliantly though. London Calling, no one can deny that's a fantastic song. And Brand New Cadillac, the second song, yeah, is really good. And I think this sounds promising. And for me, it's downhill from there. I'm just not a fan of this album. You know, I don't mind, one or two, Death or Glory, for example, Guns of Brixton. I don't mind some of them, but it's not an album that I want to really listen to very much. In fact, I think the next album, I think it was the next one after this, Sandinista, was a triple, and that's a real bore fest. And this, yeah, I don't understand why this is seen as one of the greatest albums of all time. Maybe it's just not my kind of genre of music, that particular thing, I don't know. Next up, Stephen Stills, Manasses, a band he put together in, when is this, 1970, I don't know, 71 or so, I'm not sure. So again, obviously a double album. It's got 4 name sides, and I've written these down actually. The first side is the Raven, which is kind of like rock and Latin kind of thing. The second one is the Wilderness, which is a little bit more kind of bluegrassy. The third side is called Consider, which is like a mix of stuff really. And the last side is Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay, which is a little bit more rock and blues. The Treasure is a great kind of rock bluesy song, and there's an acoustic song, Bluesman, which is pretty good at the end. It's got Chris Hillman on it, who was in the Byrds. Dallas Taylor, I think he was the drummer on Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and had played with Stephen Stills for a while. Yeah, it's okay. Again, it's a kind of a nice mix of styles. It's quite varied, but a bit overly long. And again, would it have been much better if it had been a single album? Probably. I think the same could be said of this one. This is Todd Rundgren's Something Anything, which is his third album. He plays all the instruments on it, at least on the first 3 sides. I think the 4th side is recorded live in the studio, and it's got a couple of other musicians on it as well. This has also got named sides. I've written these down. So the first side is called Bouquet of Ear-Catching Melodies, which has got I Saw the Light on it, which was, I think, a hit single for him in the States. The second side is the cerebral side. And then the third side is Kid Gets Heavy, which has got a song on it. Couldn't Tell You More, is it, I think, possibly, which is a bit kind of power poppy, which is all right. And the last side is called Baby Needs a New Pair of Snakeskin Boots, a pop operetta. So not pretentious then. Yeah, this is the side with Hello, It's Me on it. And again, it's a sprawling kind of album. There's some good moments on it, some interesting moments, some nice songs, but would it have been better as a single? Probably. So is this the creative peak, or is this just an overblown, self-indulgent mess, a double album? Here's another one. This is one of my best ever charity shop finds. I got it a couple of years ago for £5 in a charity shop in Bristol. So I was quite pleased with that, because I really wanted to get the song Safe Surfer on vinyl. I love that song. It's the guitar work is sensational. It's so psychedelic. It's a song about kind of living in, having risky sex and living in the age of AIDS, really. And there's lots of, stuff about ecology and occult and alternative spirituality and, all of that kind of stuff, political stuff. It's quite heavy going. Julian Cope was obviously the singer in Teardrop Explodes. Yeah, it's quite. I said it's quite heavy going. There's one song on here that it reminds me of someone. I don't really know who it is. Hung Up and Hanging Out to Dry. It's kind of a bit garagey. I quite like that. And A Safe Surfer is just brilliant. But would this be better as a single album? Are there too many songs that just fill up the sides? Yeah, possibly, if I'm honest. Okay, this is an album I bought simply because I love the guitarist, the main man in it, Steve Hillage. And he did an album which was called, I can't remember, it was kind of two sides of vinyl, kind of an ambient album. Can't remember what it's called now. And this is System 7. This is very much not my kind of thing, really, in that I don't have any other ambient house albums. And I bought it because of Steve Hillage's input. So this is 2 LPs for the price of one, 2 vinyl set for the price of one. It's okay to have on in the background. I'm not a great house lover. If you are, this actually could be really appealing. There's very little guitar in it. There is a little bit, almost guitar synthesizer possibly. Yeah, it's all right in the background. It's all right. Now we're getting on to kind of the albums that I think are slightly better when it comes to double albums. So first up is this one. So The River by Bruce Springsteen, again seen as one of his masterpiece albums alongside Born to Run, Born in the USA and so on. And there's some really good songs on here. Independence Day, which I think is about his father. It's a father and son kind of song. And this is quite a grown-up album in that it talks about family and love rather than, you know, growing up and losing your job on the railroad or whatever, you know, those sorts of things that he often sings about. Hungry Heart is tremendous, isn't it? Stolen Car, Drive All Night, Wreck on the Highway, some really good songs. In the title track, that's a beautiful song. I just think that's a masterpiece of a song. Is this a masterpiece of an album? No, and apologise for the pun, but I find it quite meandering. It's okay. Again, I think, you know, he is the sort of bloke I think that creates like 50 songs for an album and then just whittles it down to the ones on it. And maybe he had, you know, 60 and he couldn't whittle it down to anything more than a double, and out this came. I just think the world would have been a better place had it been a single. There we are. Next up, Layla, Derek and the Dominoes. So obviously Eric Clapton, alongside, importantly, Duane Allman, because he's the person who plays that brilliant riff on Layla. This is not a bad album at all, actually. Again, would it have been better as a single? Possibly. I do like the covers on here rather than the originals. So there's a couple of blues covers on here, especially Big Bill Broonzy's Key to the Highway. Great version of that. And there's also Have You Ever Loved a Woman? And what's the other blues song? Nobody Knows When You're Down and Out. Some really good blues songs. Eric Clapton, I think it is his best when he's playing the blues. And Duane Allman was an absolutely sensational guitarist. So it's a decent album. The one thing that I've said this before about the album version of Layla, I much prefer the single version. And when I first ever heard the album version with the piano bit at the end, I thought, what's that doing there? That's ridiculous. And I much prefer the single. And, you know, I mentioned Little Wing earlier with Sting. Well, there's a version of Little Wing on here, which is really good. But then Eric Clapton's a proper good player. Okay, next up, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder from, what's this, 76? A couple of singles came out in 77 from this. I think it's quite a lot of singles on here. This is a kind of a real mix of kind of R&B and funk and all sorts of stuff going on here. Some instrumentals, some really well-known songs. Isn't She Lovely is on here, for example. Pastime Paradise, which has been, you know, used as... sampled in lots of songs. Contusion, which I think is that the instrumental, which is kind of a little bit kind of jazz funky, which is good. Sejuk is just a sensational song. I love Another Star, and I love As. I think both of those are tremendous, and you also get a 45 with it as well. So this guy was prolific in this period, and I think this is a really good album. It's not usually my kind of thing, if I'm honest, but I think that's an absolutely brilliant album, and one of the better double albums in terms of the consistent quality. Okay, next up is Focus 3, so obviously the third album by Dutch band Focus. It's got my favourite instrumental of all time on it, and that's Sylvia. I just think Sylvia is a masterpiece of melody. It's just amazing. You know, it's very difficult, I think, to make a song that has no vocals to be memorable. It's really difficult. players like Joe Satriani has that gift of being able to make an instrumental song memorable. Sylvia is just tremendous, and there's some decent moments on here. There's some kind of meandering ones as well. For example, I don't like Elspeth of Nottingham, which is I think played on the lute, and I don't like folk and all that kind of stuff. So that's okay. House of the King is on here, which I think is an old song which was put on here to bulk it up to a double album. Anonymous, I think it's Anonymous 2, which is a whole side, it's about 26 minutes, which has a bass solo, has a drum solo. How unnecessary is a drum solo on a studio album? But Pierre van der Linden, who is the drummer, is what a musician he is. And I know Jan Ackerman, the guitarist, and Thijs van Leer are brilliant musicians, but Pierre van der Linden is really good. And there's I do like Focus 3. I like Answers, Questions, Answers. So there's some decent stuff on here. Would it have been better as a single? Yeah, probably, but you'd have had a whole side of Anonymous too. Maybe they could have just whittled that down a little bit, shaved a few bits off that, but yeah. Okay, next up is this, Crusaders. I really like the Crusaders. I find them, they're great kind of background music. They've just got such a lovely groove. This is a great example of kind of soul jazz, bit of hard bop, it's funky. We've got the Fender Rhodes still in there, but we've got a bit of synthesizer as well now. Larry Carlton is a guest on this album. He went on to be a fully fledged member later on, and some kind of nice guitar moments. Should it have been a single? They've got a couple of double albums. I think their best album is Those Southern Nights, and I think if you'd taken the best songs from here and put it onto a single, I think this album would have been stronger. Okay, we've got the last three. The last three are very much double albums and brilliant for it. So the first one up is the Jimi Hendrix Experience in Electric Ladyland. I'll take that cover down. This is, I think, just a tremendous album. The last album that Jimi Hendrix produced before his untimely death in 1970, and there's some tremendous songs on here. Crosstown Traffic, the brilliant bluesy Voodoo Child, not Voodoo Child Slight Return, that's later on in the album, but Voodoo Child, the blues song. Jimi Hendrix could really play the blues, and this is him really stretching out in the studio and really kind of experimenting, and there's some incredible psychedelic moments on here. So 1983, a merman I should turn to be is just so psychedelic. It's unbelievable. I love Still Raining, Still Dreaming, and I love obviously All Along the Watchtower, and of course Voodoo Child, which is just one of the greatest guitar moments of all time. A tremendous double album that needs to be a double album, as does this one as well. So this is this Led Zeppelin's finest moment? Not for me personally, but I know it is for a lot of people. It's quintessential Led Zeppelin. It shows all the kind of different facets of Led Zeppelin. This is the album with the Rover, with In My Time of Dying. This has got Houses of the Holy, which bizarrely wasn't on the album, Houses of the Holy. Trampled Underfoot. It's also got the epic Kashmir. But 10 Years Gone is my favourite song on here. I've always loved that song. I just think it's brilliant. This album is brilliant. Do I like it as much as 4? No, I don't. I don't actually like it as much as 3. I really like Led Zepp 3. Is it better than 2 and 1? Yes, it probably is. But it's, for me, probably the second or third best Led Zeppelin album. But I understand completely why people have this as their greatest Led Zeppelin album. So I think the album does need to be a double, which comes to the last one. And I think this album is probably the best double album of all time. And you can probably guess what it is because... well, actually, could you guess what it is? I don't know. I think this album is the greatest double album of all time. Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones. I think this is quite murky in its production and it's very ramshackle, but I absolutely adore this album. It's very much a Keith Richards album. I think, we haven't got a massive amount of Mick Jagger on it, but it has just got some just brilliant songs. I love Happy, love Turd on the Rung, Ventilator Blues is good, All Down the Line's good, Shine a Light's good, Rip This Joint. How good is that song? Rip This Joint, fantastic. Tumbling Dice, which is the only single I think from this album, possibly. Torn and Frayed, tremendous stuff. Love that. And it's got one of my favourite, if not my favourite, Rolling Stones song on here. It starts the whole album, and that's Rocks Off. I just think that song is tremendous. So this is a brilliant album. As I said, it's got a mix of, it's murky and it's ramshackle, but it's got a mix of kind of blues and rock and roll and country, even a bit of gospel. It's all going on. It's just fantastic. So there you go. There's just, you know, some of the, it's not all my favourites, but it's just some of the double albums that I do have. I've got quite a few others, and I wasn't brave enough to play a couple of the others. You know, Tales of Topographic Oceans, Lamb Lies Down. What else didn't I play? I didn't play Tusk. I didn't play Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Would they have featured in my top 10? Not sure about that. That's my number one. There you go, folks. Tell me what you think. What are your favourite double? Do you think they are an artist's creative peak? Or do you think, like I do, most of the time, they're just overblown, meandering kind of nonsense? Anyway, I'm sure I'll be back sometime soon with another video. Cheers.